Good morning. Over the next 15 minutes, I want to convince you that cardio-diabetic medicine in India is at an inflection point and that the science that will define the next decade will not come from Boston or Amsterdam. It will come from us, from Varanasi, Chennai, Delhi, and right here in Kolkata. This is the Varanasi Declaration 2026. If you remember nothing else from the next 15 minutes, remember this image. CKM syndrome, Cardio-Kidney-Metabolic, was formally defined by the AHA in 2023 as one disease with 5 stages, not 3 separate specialties. India sits at the epicenter, 101 million diabetics, 136 million pre-diabetics, 220 million hypertensives. And the molecular reason all of these patients fail their hearts, their kidneys, their livers, and their lungs is the same, a single multi-type-protein complex called the NLRP3 inflammasome. Gut bacteria leak LPS, TLR4 fires, NLRP3 assembles, caspase 1 cleaves IL-1 beta, and the cell dies by pyroptosis. The beautiful part? Every drug we already prescribed for CKM, SGLT2 inhibitors, colchicine, GLP-1s, metformin, suppresses NLRP3. We have been treating the inflammasome for a decade without naming it. Today we name it. Look at this map of India. Almost every state south of the Himalayas is orange or red, intermediate to high 10-year ASCVD risk. The American Heart Association gave us a new tool last year called PREVENT, better than Framingham, better than the pooled cohort equations, includes kidney function and HbA1c, but PREVENT was built in American cohorts. We are now building India PREVENT recalibrated for region, socioeconomic status, and the South Asian phenotype. Alongside it, Life's Essential 8 expands to Life's Essential 11, adding sleep, central adiposity, and glucose variability to capture our dual burden. The most uncomfortable finding, urban Indians do worse than rural Indians on every metric. The key takeaway is simple: stop using Framingham. Framingham was derived in Massachusetts in 1948, not for Varanasi in 2026. We were taught that lactate is a waste product of anaerobic metabolism. That is wrong. Lactate is a hormone, a lactamone, and it is the most underused biomarker in cardiometabolic medicine. When insulin resistance shuts down pyruvate dehydrogenase, pyruvate is dumped as lactate, and fasting lactate climbs above 1.5 millimoles per liter years before HbA1c moves. That lactate then modifies histone H3 at lysine 18, opens the chromatin at the NLRP3 promoter, and primes chronic IL-1 beta release. A fasting lactate above 1.5 predicts CKD progression with a hazard ratio of 1.6 and heart failure hospitalization with an odds ratio of 2.1. SGLT2 inhibitors work in part because they switch the body off lactate and onto beta-hydroxybutyrate, which silences the inflammasome. Fasting lactate costs 200 rupees in any Indian lab. It belongs in every CKM stage 2 and 3 panel I send out from Panacea. If lactate is the metabolic fuel of CKM, endothelin 1 is its vascular hand. ET1 is the most powerful vasoconstrictor the human body makes, and from a single molecule you get renal fibrosis, left ventricular hypertrophy, and pulmonary hypertension. It also activates NLRP3 in renal tubular cells, amplifying systemic insulin resistance. A plasma ET1 level above 2 picograms per milliliter predicts CKD progression with a hazard ratio of 2.1 and heart failure hospitalization with a hazard ratio of 1.7. The good news? We finally have drugs that target this axis. Atrasentan, a selective ETA antagonist, dropped proteinuria by 35% in the SONAR trial on top of maximum ARAS blockade. And daprodustat, an oral HIF prolyl hydroxylase inhibitor, gives us oral anemia correction in CKD, no more injectable EPO. RT1 antagonism in diabetic kidney disease and HIF-PH in renal anemia are the next 2 important additions to our CKM toolkit. The lung is the forgotten organ of CKM medicine. Cardiologists ignore it, nephrologists ignore it, and our patients die in the gap. Here in Varanasi, ambient PM2. 5 averages 120 micrograms per cubic meter, 8 times the WHO limit. Every breath primes alveolar NLRP3 and dumps IL-1 beta into the systemic circulation. In type 2 diabetics, an FEV below 80% predicts a 70% higher, all-cause mortality independent of HbA1c. Every 10% fall in FEV adds 28% to cardiovascular mortality. An FEV below 60% carries the same death risk as an eGFR of 30 to 45, that is, stage 3B CKD equivalent, yet nephrology gets the referral and pulmonology never sees the patient. And here is the punchline: 1 in 3 HFpF patients is misdiagnosed as having COPD or asthma because no one did the tissue Doppler. Spirometry takes 5 minutes. FEV is as powerful a mortality predictor as NT-proBNP. Every CKM clinic, including mine at Panacea, needs a spirometer on the desk. We have spent 4 slides talking about metabolic and vascular drivers of CKM. Now meet the immune amplifier complement. The cascade ends at C5a, the most potent anaphylatoxin we make. C5a binds C5AR1 on macrophages and renal tubular cells, switches on NF-kappa B, and ignites the same NLRP3 inflammasome you've now seen 4 times in this talk. Nowhere is this more visible than IgA nephropathy, the commonest primary glomerulonephritis in the world, especially in South Asians. Mesangial IgA deposits trigger the alternative complement pathway, drive NLRP3, and march the patient quietly to dialysis over 20 years. The good news? After 50 years of nothing, we finally have 2 disease-modifying drugs. Avacopan, the oral C5AR1 blocker, cut proteinuria in the ALIGN trial and spared steroids. Iptacopan, an oral factor B inhibitor, dropped proteinuria 40 to 50% in Applause IgAN and got FDA approval last December. The complement NLRP3 axis is the immune bridge of CKM, and we now have keys to it. Here is a diagnostic technology we are not using nearly enough in India: contrast-enhanced ultrasound, microbubbles between 1 and 8 micrometers, pure intravascular, exhaled through the lungs in 15 minutes with 0 renal excretion. Safe at any eGFR, including dialysis patients. For characterizing indeterminate renal masses, CEUS gives 94% sensitivity and 91% specificity, equivalent to CT without the nephrotoxicity. The unique CKM application is functional. A cortical perfusion index below 40% predicts ESRD with a 3.2-fold risk increase, well before creatinine moves. In the OB-CKD patient with HFpF, cardiac CEUS rescues ejection fraction measurements that no echocardiographer could otherwise read. And the economics are unanswerable. A CEUS study is 3 to 5,000 rupees, a CT is 8 to 15,000, and 1 episode of contrast-induced AKI costs the family 50,000 to 5 lakh. In CKD patients with diagnostic dilemmas, CEUS first, CT later. Every nephrology unit in India should have access to SonoView. We installed it at Panacea last year, and it has changed how we image CKD. If lactate is the fuel of CKM and endothelin 1 is its vascular hand, then the gut is its source code. Look at this image carefully. We now have an atlas of the dysbiotic microbiome in metabolic disease. Rumanococcus nevus is expanded, Faecalibacterium prosnacia is depleted, and Akkermansia mucinifera, the mucus guardian, is almost absent in Indian metabolic syndrome cohorts. When the barrier breaks, LPS leaks, TLR4 fires, NF-kappa B and NLRP3 light up the liver, and you get hepatic insulin resistance and MASLD. Meanwhile, choline and carnitine from red meat get converted by dysbiotic microbes to TMA. The liver makes TMAO, and TMAO drives foam cells and platelet activation. A TMAO above 6 micromoles per liter carries a MACE hazard ratio of 2.54, better than LDL. The Indian gut signature is uniquely low in Akkermansia and high in Prevotella capri, which is why our vegetarians still get diabetes. The next therapeutic class is already in phase 2, engineered E. coli Nissle that converts ammonia to arginine in CKD. But what can you prescribe on Monday morning? Isabgal 5 grams twice daily, 50 rupees a month, plus homemade dahia, plus red meat capped at twice a week. The gut is a druggable organ. Until engineered bacteria arrive, prescribe Isabgal and dahi. So far we have looked at the periphery, the gut, the vasculature, the immune system. Now we step inside the cell into the mitochondrion, because this is where CKM is finally determined. Insulin resistance damages complex I and complex 3 of the electron transport chain. ROS leaks out, oxidizing mitochondrial DNA, and these OXMT DNA fragments escape into the cytosol, where they serve as the priming signal 2 for the same NLRP3 inflammasome we have now seen 7 times in this talk. Caspase 1 cleaves gastamine D, the cell forms membrane pores, and it dies by pyroptosis. In the heart, this manifests as circa 2A failure, calcium handling failure, and HFpEF. In the kidney, fatty acid oxidation failure drives tubular lipid droplets, TGF-beta, and fibrosis. Now look at the therapeutic angles. SGLT2 inhibitors raise beta-hydroxybutyrate, which directly binds NLRP3 and blocks its assembly. Hume's Nature Medicine 2015 paper. Exercise activates PGC1-alpha and builds new, healthy mitochondria. And the first true mitochondrial drug, elamipretide SS31, binds cardiolipin, stabilizes the Christie, and shuts down OX-mTDNA release. Progress-HF Phase 3 will be announced next year. The fire inside every CKM organ is OX-mTDNA, which drives NLRP3 and pyroptosis. We now have 3 different fire extinguishers. Use them. We are halfway through. Take a breath and look at this image. Every upstream signal we have discussed, cholesterol crystals, uric acid, oxidized mitochondrial DNA, PM2.5 particles, ATP, and complement C5a, converges on a single point, the NLRP3 inflammasome. That is the molecular switchboard of CKM. Once it lights up, caspase-1 cleaves gastamine D, pores form in the plasma membrane, the cell dies by pyroptosis, and IL-1 beta, IL-18, and HMGB1 are released to prime the next cell. Fire jumps from house to house. This process explains everything that has come before, and it explains things we usually classify as separate diseases. Periodontal pathogens activate the same NLRP3, which is why untreated gum disease worsens HbA1c by 0.4%. Microglial NLRP3 activation depletes tryptophan, drops serotonin, and gives us 280 million people with depression worldwide. Depression is the brain's expression of CKM inflammation, not a psychological comorbidity. And the most beautiful intervention in all of cardiology is colchicine, 0.5 milligrams daily. The LODUCO-2 trial, 31% MACE reduction, hazard ratio 0.69, P less than 0.001, 43 to 7 rupees a day. Target NLRP3 early, calm the chronic fire, protect the heart, the kidney, the brain, and life. We have covered heart and kidney. Now meet the 2 CKM organs Indian clinicians most consistently neglect, joints and peripheral vessels. Osteoarthritis is not mechanical wear and tear. It is NLRP3 activation in chondrocyte, driven by uric acid and cholesterol crystals in the synovial fluid, exactly the same biology as atherosclerosis. That is why obesity worsens hand OA, which bears no weight. Rheumatoid arthritis is even worse, 2-fold cardiovascular mortality, the same chronic IL-6, 6, and NLRP3 fire. Every RA patient on biologics is CKM by default and deserves cardiology co-management. On the vascular side, peripheral arterial disease, ABI under 0.90 takes 5 minutes to measure, costs 200 rupees, and yet fewer than 10% of Indian diabetics have ever had one. PAD triples cardiovascular risk. And for these patients, GLP-1 receptor agonists like semaglutide deliver 26% MACE reduction in SUSTAIN 6, plus weight loss and limb event reduction. Above all, remember Compass rivaroxaban 2.5 milligrams twice daily plus aspirin reduced major limb events by 46% and MACE by 24% in stable atherosclerotic disease. It is class 1 in international guidelines and barely prescribed in India. OA is NLRP3 driven, not wear and tear. PAD screening takes 5 minutes. Both are undertreated. Both kill our patients. The cheapest, most accessible window into systemic CKM is the back of the eye, and AI has made it transformational. The retina is the only place in the human body where you can directly photograph living arterioles and venules without an incision. The arteriole-to-venule ratio, AVR, under 0.67 in the Rotterdam study predicted stroke with a 2.7-fold risk, CKD with 1.8, and heart failure with 1.6. Every 10 micrometer narrowing of the arteriole adds a 35% MACE risk. Every 10 micrometer widening of the venule adds 28% diabetes risk. The retina is a quantitative readout of NLRP3 fire. In UK biobanks, 88,000 patients AI-rayed fundus photographs predicted type 2 diabetes 5 years before clinical diagnosis with an AUC of 0.72. Google DeepMind showed in 2018 that from a single fundus photo, you can predict blood pressure within 11 millimeters, HbA1c, age, smoking status, and MACE risk. No blood draw, no BP cuff. And here is the Indian innovation that lets us actually use this. The Remedio fundus on phone, made in Bengaluru, 1.5 lakh rupees, deployed in over 200 district hospitals and used by ASHA workers in villages today. An annual fundus exam is the cheapest CKM organ assessment available. This technology is not the future. It is now. Now to the most actionable slide for every cardiologist in the room. HFpEF is the dominant heart failure phenotype in India, and it is not a pump weakness. It is a stiff, fibrotic, inflamed myocardium driven by the same NLRP3 fire we have spent the last 15 slides discussing. The good news is that there is a prevention window. 3 early warning signals: NT-proBNP above 125, EOVI prime above 14, and global longitudinal strain less negative than -16%. Any of these in a CKM stage 2 patient, diabetes, hypertension, CKD, obesity, mandates aggressive intervention. The pyramid is simple. Stage 0, lifestyle, weight, BP, glucose, salt, smoking. Stage 1, add SGL2 inhibitors. Deliver showed an 18% reduction in CV death and worsening HF. Emperor Preserve showed 21% reduction in CV death and HF hospitalization in HFpEF, the 2 trials that finally cracked HFpEF after 30 years of failed therapies. Stage 2, add ARNI for hemodynamics and fibrosis. Stage 3, add phenyranone, the non-steroidal MRA from Fidelio-DKD and Figaro-DKD, which gives you antifibrotic protection without the spironolactone side effects. The HF prevention window is stage 2 CKM. NT-proBNP plus ECHO-GLS is your early warning system. SGLT2I plus phenyranone is your evidence-based dual protection. Catch them at stage 2 and they never become the dialysis-bound, breathless 70-year-old of 2035. Cardiologists tend to think of the kidney as a filter. It is not. It is the most metabolically active organ in the body. The proximal tubule runs on 80% fatty acid oxidation, more mitochondria per cubic micron than the heart muscle. In CKM, insulin resistance disables CPT1, fatty acids cannot enter the mitochondrion, lipid droplets accumulate, MBR-OS rises, NLRP3 fires, TGF-beta drives tubular fibrosis. The kidney fails energetically before it fails mechanically, and the failing kidney then kills the heart. FGF23 rises 5 to 10 years before EGFR falls, and an FGF23 above 200 carries a 2.7 hazard for LV hypertrophy and 3.1 for sudden cardiac death. Indoxyl sulfate made by gut bacteria from tryptophan activates the aryl hydrocarbon receptor, fires NLRP3 in both kidney and heart, and doubles ESRD risk. Phosphate crystals drive vascular calcification. The therapeutic punchline is the triple stack we now have evidence for. EMPA Kidney 2023, empagliflozin gave a 28% reduction in CKD progression across all EGFR strata, diabetic or not. Flow 2024, semaglutide gave a 24% reduction in composite kidney outcomes. And from the last slide, phenyranone gave 18% reduction in CKD progression in Fidelio. Renal NLRP3 driving tubular fibrosis is the final common pathway of CKM-driven CKD. SG2I plus phenyranone plus GLP-1RA is the evidence-based triad to protect the kidney and through it the heart. Now let's move on to the operational slide for this entire talk. How do we actually order labs for a CKM patient? 3 tiers. Tier 1, every visit, every CKM patient, NT-proBNP, HS-troponin, EGFR, UACR, HbA1c, TIG index, HSCRP, and lipids. These define who graduates to Tier 2. Tier 2, Stage 2-3 CKM, the patient who is not yet in heart failure but is biologically progressing. GDF15, IL18, IL1-beta, SST2, FGF23, ET1, lactate, C5A. These reveal biology, the inflamed CKM phenotype that creatinine and HbA1c miss. 2 of these are the most underused biomarkers in Indian CKM practice and deserve your attention specifically. IL-18 is the cleanest readout of NLRP3 inflammasome activity we have. If it is above 200 picograms per milliliter, the fire is still burning and your patient needs colchicine plus SGL2I intensification plus a GLP-1RAET. 1 above 2 picograms per milliliter identifies the vasoconstrictor phenotype that will progress despite AS blockade and selects them for atrasentan when it arrives. C5a above 10 nanograms triggers an IgA or ANCA workup and a navacapan consideration. Tier 3 is the frontier. Circulating mtDNA, nail fold capillaroscopy, and retinal AI scans are part of it. IL-18 and ET1, 3,500 rupees each. are the two biomarkers that will transform your CKM clinic. Order them tomorrow. This model is the framework I want you to take home today, the TV-KIMS framework. I have expanded the American Heart Association's CKM acronym into 6 pillars because cardiovascular, vascular inflammation, and sleep deserve to be first-class organ domains, not lumped together. See cardiovascular, high-sensitivity troponin, NT-proBNP, and LPV vascular, ApoB, small dense LDL, LPL, because South Asians have the small dense LDL phenotype. K, kidney, UACR, cystatin C, KIM1, which rise before creatinine moves. I, inflammation, IL-18, GDF, 15, HSCRP, the NLRP3 fingerprint, and the most neglected pillar in Indian practice. M, metabolic, HbA1c, fast-stunting insulin, HOMA-IR, because insulin resistance precedes diabetes by a decade. S, sleep, efficiency, duration, and timing are captured passively by the smartwatches already on millions of Indian wrists. At the center is wearable HRV and VO2 max integrated by AI into a single CKM risk score. Each pillar selects different drugs. C selects ARNI and PCSK9. V selects high-intensity statin and bempedoic acid. K selects the SGLT2 Finranoni GLP-1 triad. I select colchicine. M selects metformin and TRS selects CPAP. This is precision medicine at the pillar level. The big news is that TV-KIMS is clinically deployable today, and the I-domain IL-18 plus GDF-15 is the most neglected in Indian CKM practice and the most targetable. That is the single highest yield change you can make to your clinic on Monday morning. If you take only one slide home from this talk, make sure it is this one. The CKM drug pipeline from 2025 to 2030 is the richest in the history of cardiovascular medicine. 5 molecules will arrive in your prescription pad over the next 60 months. Number 1, MCC950, the most potent selective NLRP3 inhibitor ever synthesized. Phase 2 trials in diabetic kidney disease and HFpF are expected to read out in 2026 and 2027. Number 2, and this is the watershed result, is dapansatryl OLT1177, an oral NLRP3 inhibitor. In Van Tassel's 2023 NEJM evidence paper, 12 weeks of dapansatryl in heart failure patients dropped IL-18 by 60%, HSCRP by 40%, and improved left ventricular ejection fraction by 4 absolute percentage points. That is the proof of concept this entire talk has been building toward, that targeting NLRP3 directly improves cardiac function in humans. Number 3, ziltivekimab, the IL-6 blocker built specifically for CKM, dropping HSCRP by 90% in the rescue trial. Zeus Phase 3 reads out this year. Number 4, sotagliflozin, already FDA approved, is the dual SLT1 and 2 inhibitor with a 26% reduction in HF events in SCORED. Number 5, pelacarsen for LP and obicetrapib for residual lipid risk, both reading out in 2025. The pipeline is dense, mechanism-driven, and arriving fast. Dapansatryl is the proof that NLRP3 inhibition improves cardiac function in humans. The future of CKM medicine is being written now. If the previous slide was the future, this slide is Monday morning. The CKM prevention pyramid has 3 tiers, applied stage by stage. At the base, for every CKM patient, regardless of stage, life's essential 11 above 80, meal sequencing, time-restricted eating 12 by 12, 150 minutes of exercise a week, sleep 7 to 9 hours, and N95 masks when AQI exceeds 150, which in Varanasi means October to March. Middle tier, stage 1 to 2, metformin in prediabetes, blood pressure below 130/80, statin and colchicine 0.5 milligrams once daily for 3 to 7 weeks, plus PHQ-9 for depression and stop bang for sleep apnea. Top tier, stage 2 to 3, the 4-drug stack SGLT2 inhibitor regardless of HbA1c, GLP-1 receptor agonist if BMI exceeds 25, Finranoni if UACI exceeds 30 with diabetes, and ARNI for established heart failure. Annual monitoring goes far beyond HbA1c and lipids ABI, nail fold capillaroscopy, retinal AI, FEV1, fasting lactate, IL-18, GDF-15, CEUS, and C5A2 underused adjuncts deserve a special mention. Periodontal scaling every 6 months reduces HbA1c by 0.4%, the size of adding a DPP for inhibitor for 2,000 rupees a year, And allopurinol in any CKM patient with urate above 6 milligrams per deciliter reduces urate crystal-driven NLRP3 activation for 2 rupees a day. The key message of this slide and of this entire talk is that at every stage there is a proven affordable intervention. The tragedy in India is not the lack of evidence. It is lack of systematic implementation. Now look at this dashboard: 12 gauges, 12 biomarkers, 12 hazard ratios. This is what kills CKM patients. The cardiac panel, NT-proBNP above 1000 plus high sensitivity troponin above 14 gives a cardiac death hazard of 4.2 in the CHARM and Corona pooled analyses. GDF 15 above 4000 gives a 3.1-fold mortality risk. Above 10,000 is the cachexia signature with 50% 6-month mortality. The kidney panel, and this is the number I want you to remember more than any other on this slide, shows that an EGFR below 30 and a UACR above 300 results in a mortality hazard ratio of 5.6. It is multiplicative, not additive. Most clinicians treat EGFR and UACR as separate variables. They are not, they multiply each other's lethality. The inflammation panel, IL-18 above 400 in heart failure, carries a 2.4-fold mortality and selects patients for colchicine intensification. The lung, FEV1 below 60% predicted, carries the same mortality as stage 3B CKD, yet nephrology gets the referral and pulmonology never sees the patient. The microcirculation, nail fold capillary density below 5 per millimeter plus whole blood viscosity above 5. 5 millipascal seconds gives a 3.4-fold 2-year mortality. And the brain, the PHQ-9 depression score, predicts mortality independently with an HR of 2.1. The cost of the complete 12-variable CKM mortality panel, under 3,000 rupees. The three most neglected IL-18, FEV1 and ET1 are precisely the biomarkers that no one in India is currently measuring. Fix that and you fix CKM mortality stratification overnight. Everything in the last 22 slides, the biology, the biomarkers, the drugs, the framework culminates here. The Varanasi Declaration 2026, India's first consensus document on CKM syndrome, 13 recommendations grouped under 5 pillars. First, Indiocentric evidence and context, Indian epidemiology, Indian healthcare realities, and Indian resource settings. Second, an early identification and risk-based approach. Screen from age 20, not 40, because South Asians get MI a decade earlier than Europeans. Third, comprehensive treat-to-target management. End the disease silo. Treat the CKM patient, but do not treat the diabetic or hypertensive. Statins, SGLT2 inhibitors, GLP-1 receptor agonists, phenylalanine and ARNI should be used in a risk-stratified and individualized manner. Fourth, health system strengthening. Team-based care, task shifting, digital health, and ASHA-deployed AI fundus cameras. We can deliver CKM care at scale where cardiologists are scarce. Fifth, policy and equity focus. Include SGLT2I and GLP-1RA in Jan Aushadhi. Regulate ultra-processed foods. Enforce PM 2.5 limits. The declaration is named, signed, and citable Mishra et al., Cardiabcon Society 2026. It is modeled on the American Heart Association 2023 statement but rewritten for India. This is our evidence-based answer to AHA 2023. Today, from Varanasi to Kolkata, we sign it. We end where we began on the Ghats of Varanasi, looking across the Ganga as the sun sets and the diyas are lit. In the center of this image, you see the NLRP3 inflammasome, and around it, 8 organs in a single constellation. The heart, the kidney, the lung, the liver, the gut, the brain, the joints, and the eye. 1 molecular engine, 8 organs, 1 disease. 5 type take-home messages for Monday morning. First, adopt a CKM lens in every patient. Treat the patient, not a single risk factor. Second, target inflammation as a modifiable driver. Every successful CKM drug we already prescribe acts on NLRP3, name it. Third, screen smartly and risk stratify better. Don't miss subclinical organ involvement. Fourth, personalize and partner. Equity and access is part of therapy. And fifth, plan, document, and follow up. 90-day action plans save organs and lives. What is measured gets improved. I want to leave you with one sentence that I hope you will remember long after this talk is forgotten. The NLRP3 inflammasome does not know your zip code, but our treatments must be aware of it. The biology is universal. The same molecule fires whether the patient is in Boston, in Amsterdam, in Varanasi, or right here in Kolkata. But the therapy must be tailored to the South Asian phenotype, to Indian economics, to Indian health systems, to the village ASHA worker with a smartphone fundus camera, and to the tertiary cardiologist with a CS machine. The future of cardio-kidney-metabolic medicine in India will not be written in Boston or Amsterdam. It will be written in Varanasi, in Chennai, in Delhi, and right here in Kolkata. From science to service, from evidence to equity. Thank you.